Welcome back to Lucky Paper. We're here again with Battlebox. My name is Andy. I'm here on the left side of the screen, and I'm playing Magic with my good friend Anthony on the right side of the screen. Hi, Anthony.
Hello. Hi. Hey.
It's you, right side of the screen guy.
Right side of the screen guy.
We're back with another game of Battlebox. Anthony, you have, I think, a minute and a half.
All right, great.
Why don't you tell the people what Battlebox is?
So Battlebox is a fun way to play Magic where we have a big deck, a bunch of cards, all 5 colors with no lands, and we can play lands from our command zone where we have 10 lands total, one of each basic land and one of each of the allied guild gates. So the format is we will not get flooded, we won't get screwed, but we have to make the most out of a lot of interesting and complex and generally sort of lower powered cards.
It's like Commander, except your commander is an island.
Interesting. And also,
Or a Selesnya Guildgate.
it's a Selesnya Guildgate, and all the lands have partner with all of these 9 other lands.
Yes. It's a very cool format, just like Commander. That's what I'd
yeah.
say about it. No, it's
So-
not like Commander at all. It's more like playing, a game of Limited, except the Limited is that you're drawing off of the same deck instead of building a deck from limited packs.
Yeah. A fun aspect of it is that you're not playing a deck with a specific strategy. It's not like you're just always on I'm the aggro, I have to attack every turn I can. It's more like you get 4 random cards, so you only start with 4 cards because you already have all the lands you need, so it keeps it kind of balanced. And then just based on the 4 cards you have to come up with a plan. And that plan might change turn to turn with every card you draw.
Yeah, so you have no tutors in the battle box. You
Yep.
have nothing else that requires you to shuffle your library because
No shuffling.
the library is enormous, so that's not really feasible. So you're basically, you're just playing value creatures. That's the other thing is, when you're building a battle box like Anthony has, we're playing Anthony's box in this video, you can't just put in stuff that's like extremely synergistic, right? Because you're not going to get necessarily 2 halves of that synergy pie, and so you can't just jam in combo cards or whatever, because all the cards basically have to be good in almost every scenario, which I say it's like limited, like traditional limited, because I think that's one of the typical ways people evaluate cards in regular draft. You need a card that's good as much of the time as possible. That's kind of your quadrant theory there.
Yeah, and for that reason, there's also a lot of cards that are more situational. They might be modal cards where they have multiple different effects. So they have a higher chance of doing something. Or a lot of the situational cards have cycling, so you can throw them away if they're too expensive or don't destroy the right thing at the right time. So that we'll see a lot of those kinds of cards.
Yep, Anthony wins the role here and is on the play.
At last.
Though you don't always choose to be on the play. It's worth noting in Battlebox.
I think that the box maybe I have been changing it a little bit, and there's trying to get to less like super grindy board style games. But I think basically the longer the games go, the more beneficial it is to be on the draw, because it's more useful to actually you'll win more likely through card advantage rather than just getting out a 3/3 first.
So I can see your opening hand here. You have a Siren Storm Tamer, a Pyre Hound, a Hieroglyphic Illumination, and what's that last card there? That last red card.
That is a Reckless Racer.
Reckless Racer. And on the other side of the table, I have a Strangleroot Geist, a Core Skyfisher, a Metallic Mimic, and a Hunt the Weak. So I don't know about you. My hand, I'm looking at, I have a couple little interesting synergies already here. So there's one kind of anti-synergy, which is that Metallic Mimic and Strangleroot Geist is not exactly a combo.
Oh, no.
The Undying brings it back with a +1/+1 counter. If it had Persist, for example, Metallic Mimic would be great with it, but instead it's kind of a non-bow. Core Skyfisher is an interesting card. It allows you to bounce something to get some benefit, but also it's just an undercosted body. It's a 2 mana for a 2/3 flyer, which can be very good. You lead off here with a Siren Storm Tamer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I choose to cast Lava Axe on turn 1. Often I like to get the tap lands out as quickly as possible, but honestly, the early game, there's not a ton of creatures with flying, so the evasion is very relevant there, and I think I'm kind of counting on this doing a bunch of damage.
Oh, that seems like a very reasonable assumption that you're going to be able to get in with a lot, playing a 1-powered flyer on turn 1. Usually that's not very good, of course, but I think the activated ability of Storm Tamer makes it worth the inclusion. You wouldn't want to put a 1-powered 1/1 flyer in the cube with no other relevant abilities. So I draw a Shard Phoenix off the top of the library, which is an interesting card that allows me to deal 2 damage to all non-flyers. So given that I have Shard Phoenix and I have a Core Skyfisher, I'm wondering, is there a chance Anthony's going to flood the board with a bunch of non-flying creatures and I can get some benefit off of this? So that's what I'm thinking about right now. But I draw a Pitfall Trap off the top and decide to instead just play the Strangleroot Geist, get in for some damage. So my thinking here is that if I end up blocking with the Strangleroot Geist, or if Anthony, better yet, blocks and trades for it, I can put it back in my hand with Score Skyfisher and then replay it without that +1/+1 counter because it's going to come back with a counter from Undying. So I'm trying to get some benefit off of that. That's the kind of little combo I'm looking for right now.
That's a really nice line, I think. So I drew a... oh my god. Undead Gladiator, which is a card that you can cycle and then get back from your graveyard. Unfortunately, I find it to be usually a little bit too slow, and it's not really going to work here, but what will is that Reckless Racer. It's got first strike, so it'll kill both halves of the Strangleroot Geist.
So yeah, that makes my whole Strangleroot plan look kind of bad. At least on the offensive. I can still block with the Strangleroot Geist and put it back in my hand with this Core Skyfisher, but I was hoping to be aggressive with it and get anything to trade for something. But the 2-powered First Striker is going to make that plan pretty useless. So I'm currently reevaluating. I drew a Sharpless Agent for turn. That's one of these cards with Cascade, and in the Battlebox, Cascade is truly, could be anything. I mean, you think about building a deck with Cascade, you're very carefully considering what cards you can hit off of your Cascade trigger, but in the box, I could hit literally anything. There's all kinds of stuff. There's counter spells, there's combat tricks, there's stuff that doesn't matter. I could just hit a good solid value 2-drop and really get my value for my 3 mana. But I personally not looking to play out the Sharpless Agent. That's never my first thought in my hand. I'll do that out of desperation or if it's like a very mana efficient play. Instead, seeing that my Geist plan has been a little bit shut down, I'm going to play out the Metallic Mimic, and all I'm going to do here is I'm going to name Soldier. The only Soldier in my hand is the Core Skyfisher, and I'm just playing this out basically as an expensive way to get an additional +1/+1 counter on my Core Skyfisher, because on this board, a 3/4 in the air is going to be a very, very good body. Good blocker, good attacker. So even though it's a little bit roundabout, I'm going to play the Mimic now. My plan is to bounce it to my hand next turn when I play the Core Skyfisher, get that counter on the Core Skyfisher, then replay the Mimic, naming some other relevant creature type. And that's the kind of line I'm going to pursue, leaving this Geist Black on defensive duty.
That's so cool. Yeah, so it might be worth mentioning that in a typical, constructed deck, obviously you'd have one creature type, maybe you're just playing elves and you'd be playing Metallic Mimic and always naming elves, and it can be one of the more powerful cards in your deck. In this case, it's the power level is muted because you have all kinds of different creatures in your hand. So it's just a matter of figuring out how do you get the most value out of it.
It's kind of like a reverse Kujar Seed Sculptor.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
The Seed Sculptor is the 2-drop from Aethervolt Kaladesh that puts a +1/+1 counter on a creature when it enters the battlefield. This one kind of just says put a +1/+1 counter on the next creature you play a lot of times in the battle box. And it can be any creature.
If you can name human or wizard, maybe you get a couple triggers out of it, or if you have something that makes a couple tokens, that can also be valuable. Or, again, I like what you did here.
All right, so I honestly was a little surprised not to see Anthony attack with the Reckless Racer. I was kind of counting on that. I assumed he'd want to rummage. He didn't attack with it, leaving my Geist kind of straighted back there, which is a little bit of a bummer. I drew Lay Claim for the turn, 7 mana, gain control of enchanted permanent, but Anthony put a Pyrehound in play last turn, and I'm already feeling a little worried about the Pyrehound. This can spitball out of control, and right now the only hard removal I have in my hand is this Pitfall Trap, which Anthony's not likely to only be attacking with that anytime soon, and I'm not excited about paying 3 mana for the Pitfall Trap unless I have to. So I'm going to go ahead and execute the plan I described last turn. I play the Skyfisher, make it a 3/4, and then bounce the Mimic, and then replay the Mimic. And here I have an interesting decision to make. So I have Sharpless Agent in hand. That's a human rogue. I have a Shard Phoenix in hand. That is a Phoenix, and this is a little bit of metagaming, but I believe Anthony knows for a fact that he's the only Phoenix in the battle box, so yes. I tip my hand a little bit.
Unless you count the shapeshifters.
Let's count the shapeshifters. I tip my hand a little bit if I choose to name Phoenix, because Anthony will almost certainly know I have Shard Phoenix, which is a relevant card to play around, because it affects the kind of creatures he'll play out. It affects how he'll attack, knowing that 2 damage could be dealt to anything at any time. So I kind of rolls over my head. Would I rather have a name human, which is a pretty safe thing to name. It's probably the most common creature type in the battle box. The only thing in my hand it affects is the Sharpless Agent, and not give away any information. Or name Phoenix and potentially be able to put down an additional 3 power of flying in the air on the next turn, which represents a 3-turn clock with the Core Skyfisher, which feels pretty good. And what I eventually decided to do was name Phoenix here on the promise of that additional point of power being on a flyer being worth giving up the information to you that I have Shard Phoenix in hand. I don't know if that was correct, but that is what I decided to do. This Mimic names Phoenix.
Yeah.
Anthony forgets to untap his Siren Storm Tamer. We call the judge. He gets an immediate match loss.
And that's it. Good. Thanks for watching, guys.
Video over.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and untap my little dude. So I'm feeling pretty good about my Pyre Hound. This is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it also has Trample, which is very relevant.
The Trample is very relevant. It's a Trampley boy.
And I also feel good about having my Siren Storm Tamer that can protect it. And I just drew a Manowar, which is, I think, a really good draw on this board. You getting that big flyer kind of shuts down most of my plan. So being able to shut that down is going to help me out a lot.
Yeah, Manowar off the top, as we'll see played here, is pretty devastating, given that I jumped through 2 turns and 6 mana worth of hoops to get that Core Skyfisher to be a 3/4 instead of a 2/3. And now, having replayed the Metallic Mimic, have no means of getting that counter back on it. Very strong play here that kind of unrolls my entire strategy from the past couple turns.
So now I have a pretty safe attack. You could double block still the Pyre Hound and kill that. So again, I think that's how I'm sort of planning to win the game. So I don't want to risk losing that. So
yeah, you choose to rummage here by discarding the Undead Gladiator, which has relevant effects in the graveyard, and then I block the Geist on the Reckless Racer just to save some damage, and get back the Geist with a +1/+1 counter with the Undying ability. So I'm not feeling great at this point. It's worth noting. Anthony still has plenty of cards in hand. I think we have about the same number of cards in hand. Can't see an exact count from here, but he's pretty ahead on board, and my plans have kind of fallen apart a little bit. It's a pretty devastating tempo play to get my Core Skyfisher bounced. Although it is worth noting, this now reopens the option for me to, play around with the Strangleroot Geist and get it back to my hand and play it out as a blocker, which is a reasonable strategy given that I'm on the defensive now. I'm going to try to use the Strangleroot Geist as a fog, a blocker, maybe a way to trade with something smaller if I get the opportunity. Yeah. I missed what I drew for turn. I wasn't paying careful enough attention, but I know I have Lay Claim in hand. I've got the Core Skyfisher back in my hand, and I'm trying to figure out what to do. I think I drew Hunt the Weak for turn. I'm pretty sure.
I think that was in your opening hand.
Hunt the Weak?
I thought so.
No, definitely not.
Definitely could have been thinking of the last game.
No, I had did not have Hunt the Weak in my opening hand. I had Skyfisher and other stuff.
All right, we got a Plains.
Here's a situation where the mana doesn't really work out for me. So here I want to play the Skyfisher and I want to replay the Strangleroot Geist, but I can't do that without playing another untapped land and stranding a mana because I need the green off of the Selesnya Guildgate, which means I have to play my untapped white source to be able to play out the Skyfisher. This is not a great play for me this turn. I didn't have anything better to do with my mana, which was a bit of a bummer. But I decided eventually to, just get that Geist back, get some more blockers. Let's see. I was Narnum Renegade for turn, not Hunt the Weak. So I have Narnum Renegade in hand now. Trying to figure out what to do with that. I do have Hunt the Weak as well, so I may miss a couple draws here. Narnum Renegade and Hunt the Weak. Yeah, I didn't feel like, hindsight 2020, maybe I should have just bit the bullet and thrown the Mimic or something under the bus in front of that Pyre Hound. That might have been the correct thing to do. I do have the Pitfall Trap in my hand, which I'm kind of leaning on at this point to get rid of that Hound if it gets out of control. But yeah, the board's getting a little flooded, and I don't have great blocks anywhere yet, so.
Yeah. So I just drew a Complicate, which is a counter spell that also has a cycle to counter effect on it. So I'm happy to have that. That's, again, another way that I can protect my Pyre Hound and also grow it at the same time. So I'm trying to decide if I can keep up Complicate and also play anything else in this turn, or if I want to just play a tap land and pass.
Which is what you do, which is extremely suspicious if you're sitting in my seat.
Oh, yes.
Somebody has 5-6 cards in hand, 5 mana available, chooses to play nothing.
Which isn't great. Like, I'm thinking in the same lines, I'm probably going to be stranding some mana here as well, but I think it's worth it just to stick to the plan of protecting the Pyre Hound.
Yeah, and at this point, you will not, for many, many turns, leave all your mana tapped, which means that my Hunt the Weak is just going to get countered by a Siren Storm Tamer if I try and point it at something. I drew a Splendid Agony, which is another card that is, looking pretty bad against Siren Storm Tamer. I could obviously burn it just to get rid of the Storm Tamer itself, which is an option, but not the best potential use case for that. Transparently here, I'm thinking if there's some way I can get you on this exact board to tap out or kill the Storm Tamer or something, I want to put a -1/-1 counter on each of your 3 toughest creatures, and then follow up with that Shard Phoenix to do the rest of the 2 damage and make it kind of a devastating 3-for-1. I guess 3 for 2, given that I had to spend the Splendid Agony on it as well. But that's kind of what I'm looking at, but it's not really an option for me. So I have a handful of stuff that Siren Stormtamer kind of just shuts down. I've got Hunt the Weak, Splendid Agony, Lay Claim, even Pitfall Trap is going to get shut down by Siren Stormtamer. So not looking great.
Does Hunt the Weak get countered if one of its targets is invalid? It doesn't, right? So you still get the 1/1 counter?
No, let's read the card. I think it targets both. I assume it does, in which case you would still get the counter. Yeah, it targets both. So if if the thing it was going to fight gets removed, you would still get the +1/+1 counter. But yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out what to do here. I feel like I don't have very many great plays. I have nothing else to do efficiently with my mana. I'm on 6 mana this turn. Next turn I'll have enough mana for Lay Claim, which is something that if I target a creature is likely to get countered by Siren Stormtamer. But I have nothing to do with exactly 6 mana, and so I'm just going to play a tap land. And like I mentioned before, I'm not likely to want to run out of Shardless Agent unless I have nothing better to do, and I'm pretty sure this is a turn where I end up doing it because I felt like I had nothing else to do. Yep, so there it is, the Shardless Agent.
Shardless Agent.
So here, I felt like I had nothing better to do with my mana, and this is just a good time, as far as I'm concerned, to roll the dice and see what I can hit. But this does run right into a Complicate, unfortunately.
Yeah, so even though I said I wanted to keep the Complicate to protect the Pyrehound, I'm pretty sure with the mana that Andy has left, there's not a way that he can still remove the Pyrehound this turn. So I'm going to go ahead and counter that so Andy's board doesn't get too developed, so I lose any opportunity to attack. And it grows the Pyrehound, and I also have another removal spell in my hand that I can use to kill the Core Skyfisher that's really preventing me from having any good attacks. So I think that's a pretty good plan. Oh, and there's another one.
Oof. Devastation. Yeah, and it's not even though it's really conservative of you, I think, to keep up counter magic to protect the Hound, given that you also have Stormtamer.
Right.
You've got many layers of protection.
So I'm okay spending that
on that big threat right there.
I would love to have been able to cycle it to counter something of yours, but you had too much mana left.
Yeah, I didn't feel too bad about getting that Shardless Agent complicated for the stated reasons. I feel like it's high risk. Very swingy card. I could have just hit a combat trick or something useless. Here, my Skyfisher eats a Doomblade, which kind of opens up the floodgates in terms of attacks. Don't really have any good blocks left so much. I have a trade or two I wouldn't mind taking with the Geist, at least for now. But yeah, here you come.
So coming on in, I'm happy with all the trades that can be made. Reckless Racer trading for... I guess it wouldn't trade. It's got first strike, so it'll still kill one of them. So, yeah, I'm happy with any of the trades here. And I'm not going to discard anything. I think I'm pretty happy with my hand here.
Which is bad news for me, too, when I'm sitting on the other side of a table and you're like, swing with Reckless Racer. No discard. And I'm like, boo.
All these cards are great.
No.
So the other card that I'm holding up here is Hieroglyphic Illumination. And I could go ahead and cast that during combat or after blocks. But I'm just going to go ahead and hold on to that. There are a lot of instant speed effects in the Battlebox, so keeping a bunch of mana untapped is pretty threatening.
Yeah, I eventually here go for the blocks on the Manowar with the Metallic Mimic and on the Racer with the Strangleroot Geist, just to preserve my life total. I do get to trade with the Manowar, which is nice, and my Geist, again, has no counter on it, so it's going to come back with Undying, so it ends up being not the worst blocks for me, all things considered, but certainly if his board is not developing in a way that seems... good for me long term in my life.
So I'll go ahead and play a tap land. In retrospect, maybe keeping up both the Siren Stormtamer and the Hieroglyphic Illumination by playing an untapped land might have been a better option, but I think this will be fine. Like I can still, as a last resort, activate the Siren Stormtamer, but it'll leave 3 mana stranded, so we'll see.
I draw Nivix Guildmage for turn. This has 2 activated abilities. One is just looting, and another one is copying a spell you control, which is the thing I'm starting to roll around in my head as maybe being a way to get around the Siren Stormtamer, put 2 copies of a spell I need to resolve on the stack, and you can only counter one of them. But at this point, you still have untapped mana. You played a counter spell last turn. I was feeling like you probably wouldn't have 2 in your hand. So I'm faced with the option of... doing something to get rid of the Stormtamer, just very proactively, trying to cast Splendid Agony and taking a counter off of your guy. Honestly, off of my own Strangleroot Geist was not a terrible play. Target the Geist and target the Stormtamer. But the Stormtamer's ability, of course, does counter it completely. So even if I target one of my creatures with it and one of yours, the result is going to be that the Stormtamer can still just counter it. So instead, what I end up doing here, I believe, is casting Hunt the Weak. And my logic here is this could, of course, be countered by the Storm Tamer. If it is, I'm happy because then the Pyre Hound is opened up to me doing whatever I want to do. If it's not countered, then I just get to eat the Racer with the Strangleroot Geist, which, after much thinking, is I'm pretty sure what I end up doing. And what I'm trying to decide here is if it's worth trying to get rid of that Storm Tamer this turn, or if I'm just going to go for the Racer and let you make the decision of whether or not to keep the Storm Tamer around or not, which is some interesting information for me, right? I should be paying very careful attention to what Anthony tries to do. For example, if I see him let the Racer die, even with a Storm Tamer activation available, that could signal to me that he has no other way to protect the Pyre Hound. Plus, that is kind of a clean 1-for-1. I'll get another counter on the Strangleroot Geist and just destroy the Racer without having to trade or anything. In a situation, too, I kind of wouldn't mind for something to die because I also have this Narnum Renegade in hand, and in a pinch, Narnum Renegade can be used to Hunt the Weak on the Pyre Hound. That's 2-for-1ing myself. Not excited about doing that. I do still have the Pitfall Trap as well. All these things are kind of stifled by the Siren Storm Tamer, though.
Right.
Which remains
even
a problem.
Just the cheap Death Touch creature, even if you don't end up using Hunt the Weak to take down the Pyre Hound, still means I'm not going to attack very confidently, at least.
You probably should.
Really? just throw your big trample creature into the little Death Touch creature?
If it's going to put me with as low as it would put me in this situation, I don't know. Maybe you should.
Maybe.
I continue to do math. So what I'm trying to do now is, like, if I'm going to Hunt the Weak, what can I hold up? And the answer is I can Hunt the Weak and hold up either Splendid Agony or the Pitfall Trap, which is the line I end up taking. You see me here reorganizing my mana to make sure that after I play my land for the turn, I will have either of those two available to me, with the knowledge that both of them are also nullified, again, by the Siren Storm Tamer. This game really came down to the Siren Storm Tamer quite substantially. But here we go. I am going to Hunt the Weak. Oh boy, more indecision.
It's really easy to mess up all these lands and tap out and then realize, oh no, I tapped the wrong dual land and now I don't have this color.
I think that was me remembering that I want to hold up not just not just Splendid Agony, but also Pitfall Trap. So here comes the Hunt the Weak on the Geist and the Reckless Racer. And like you're saying, Anthony, I think managing the mana is one of the more difficult things about Battlebox, and it's not one of my favorite complexities. It's not. Yeah. It's like kind of a gotcha thing where if you don't keep track of it very carefully, you end up kind of stranding yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
And it takes a lot of forethought to figure out what lands you want to tap because there are all 5 colors involved. But here I have done that, so I've left myself up with Splendid Agony and Pitfall Trap. But Anthony didn't bat an eye when he let that Reckless Racer die. Yeah. So that tells me that he either has no other way to protect the Pyre Hound, or is just kind of all in on the plan of getting that Hound in, and that's how he thinks he's going to win the game.
Yeah, and I think the combination of both not being able to cast my Hieroglyphic Illumination and protect, the fact that I care more about protecting the Pyre Hound rather than the Reckless Racer, means I really just wasn't interested. Again, I kind of did make that decision last turn that I wasn't going to be able to do both by playing a tapped land, but I stand by the decision. So, end of turn, Hieroglyphic Illumination. Put another counter on my Pyre Hound and draw 2 cards.
So, hindsight 2020, it's hard watching these videos. This is a great opportunity. I probably should have, in response, just cast that Splendid Agony, gotten rid of the Storm Tamer, taken a counter off of the Pyre Hound. This would have guaranteed that as far as I know, this would have guaranteed that my Lay Claim would have resolved on the Pyre Hound next turn, or made my Pitfall Trap safer if that was what I decided I wanted to do. But it's not. I missed that. I didn't quite see that here. It's funny, things are easier. And this is actually one of my favorite things about Battlebox. I feel like it is one of the best ways to improve at Magic and figure out what mistakes you're making. Whereas oftentimes in Constructed or normal set limited, you end up in a situation where it's just like, oh, I drafted a bad deck, so I can't really learn much from this draft other than don't do it this bad in the future, because all these games are going to be tainted by the fact that my deck is not good. Or in Constructed, certain matchups mean that you just are really favored or really not favored to win, and it's kind of a more complicated metagame thing than just what mistakes did you make that led to this sort of game state. But here in Battlebox, all you have is your decisions. You sit down at the table with nothing else. All you have is the decisions you make with the cards you draw. So here, a mistake like that of me not just getting rid of that Storm Tamer, taking a counter off of the Pyre Hound when you were tapped out, seems pretty relevant.
Yeah.
That could have definitely changed the tide of the game.
So here, off of my Illumination and then draw step, I drew an Oust, a Condescend, and a Doom Necromancer. So with another counter spell, another removal spell, and a way to buy back a creature in my hand, I feel pretty good about my prospects here. I think I'm doing a lot of that aforementioned figuring out your mana base situation.
So here, obviously, Anthony has Storm Tamer up. I know this, but I've got to get rid of it somehow. So I'm just going to point the Pitfall Trap at the Pyrehound and force some kind of answer. And again, I have the information from last turn that Anthony did not save the Reckless Racer, which led me to believe that maybe you had no other way to protect the Pyrehound. Mm-hmm. Of course, you have since drawn it. And here comes the devastating Condescend for 1.
So I'm actually delighted with the fact that you have cast this, because now it means I'm not trying to figure out how much mana do I want to leave for Condescend on the next turn, which is an X-cost mana spell. X-cost counterspell. So because now I can just Condescend for 1, makes my Pyrehound bigger, and now I'm just worried about keeping 1 blue up so I can counter a spell with the Siren Storm Tamer and just dump the rest of my hand.
Yeah, and hindsight 2020, no spoilers. Feels like maybe this couple turns is where this game was lost for me. not using Splendid Agony on the Storm Tamer, then getting kind of blown out here by you not just having the Storm Tamer man up, but having a counter spell that allows you to scry and control the top deck and put another counter on the Pyrehound, putting me at 4. Not a great situation. Here, though, I think you got a little bit overeager.
I did.
So you run out the Doom Necromancer and a Seal of Doom. I think maybe feeling like this game is kind of wrapped up. What can I possibly do to get out of this sort of situation? You'll just flood the board with lots of things. So here, that Doom Necromancer represents a lot of things. The most obvious to me is getting back a Man of War. So instant speed, bouncing something, which can be very powerful. And the Seal of Doom, of course, is a removal spell for everything you've seen me play so far.
Yeah. And I could have just used the Seal of Doom right away to kill the Geist, but I thought maybe we'll see if anything more relevant happens.
And with me at 4, that seems like a pretty safe play.
Yeah.
So, on my end of the board, I have drawn Grisly Fate, I believe. No, not quite yet. This game is still going because I don't think I drew that quite yet. It's hard to say. How did I survive this turn? It's hard to remember. I already played that. Yeah, so here's what happens here. This is where you tapped out, which means that my lay claim is now, as far as I can tell, online. I don't know if there's anything you can do at 0 mana in the battle box to interact with the board at all, but basically my question this turn is, do I flood the board with a bunch of chump blockers? I have the Guild Mage in hand. I just drew Sacred Cat, which you scribed to the top for me. I have Narnum Renegade. Do I just kind of run out all these creatures and hope that I can have some profitable blocks next turn, or do I commit all of my mana for the entire turn into lay claiming that Pyrehound? And what that basically means, as far as I'm concerned, is if you don't have any removal for the enchantment, you're probably going to be forced to either Seal of Doom your own Pyrehound or spend the Necromancer to get the Mana War to bounce your own Pyrehound. Either way, it's a really good tempo play for me.
Right.
So here I'm kind of doing the math, thinking about those two different options. This is a place where I made another kind of devastating mistake. So here, I still have an untapped land I can play, a Swamp. And I have 7 mana, and I haven't played land for turn yet. So if I play the Swamp, I can cast a Lay Claim for 7 mana, still have the 1-up to run out the Sacred Cat, which is a chump blocker that'll gain me a little bit of life, because it does have the Embalm, so it'll probably gain me 2 life over the course of a couple turns while chump blocking a couple times. But I miss that. So instead what I do is I tap all 7 of my mana, play the Lay Claim, then realize I don't have untapped white because I've already played my planes on prior turn, and I can't run out the Sacred Cat. I also can't run out the Narnum Renegade. So I put myself in a situation where I can't run out either of those cards because I wasn't paying enough attention to the mana, because Battlebox is very difficult.
That's how it works.
So Anthony, you have Oust, and what else in your hand right now? Tragic Lesson, I think.
Oust and Tragic Lesson and
Gravedigger, I see. I think looks
Gravedigger. So yeah, again, I'm feeling pretty good with all these ways that I can buy back my creatures.
Here comes the Lay Claim on the Pyrehound, which I feel like is kind of a forced move for me. Again, you can see I didn't play land first. I made some mistakes managing my mana here, but yeah, if this resolves and Anthony, there's a lot of answers I can see already. Like I said, there's the Necromancer, there's the Seal of Doom. So I'm not going to get to swing with this Pyrehound, I know. And it's basically a 7-mana tempo play where I'm forcing him to spend a couple cards to get back to that state and delaying him a little bit. But that's the only thing I can do at this point, I think.
Yeah.
And I should have done it by playing an untapped land and also following up with an Narnum Renegade, or more likely a Sacred Cat, because a couple of life might have made the difference as I was trying to turn the corner in this game.
Definitely. Yeah, and I feel very dumb for getting a little bit overeager and not leaving up mana for my Siren Stormtamer. But I know I have those options Andy mentioned, so I still feel okay about this. End of turn, I'm just going to get rid of that Strangleroot Geist. 4/3 is pretty relevant, and depending on what I draw here, I might even just be able to win with a combat trick, so we'll see what I get.
And at this point, I kind of expect that the Necromancer is now going to Mana War the Pyrehound. Although, you've got 3 power on board. All it takes is anything, any burn spell, any combat trick to just make this lethal right away. So I'm in perilous territory, to say the least.
So I'm going to go ahead and Tragic Lesson first thing. Again, I know that a combat trick wins me the game. So I'll dig a little bit deeper.
You draw a Revelark Nightfire Giant, it looks like.
Yep, and I haven't played a land yet, which is relevant because I might want to play the land back from my hand or play a different land depending on what I draw.
Yeah.
And I decided I don't want to cast either of those, so I'm just going to go ahead and pick up one of my lands that I can replay.
Here comes the Mana War.
Then Mana War
on the Pyrehound.
The Pyrehound with the Doomed Necromancer.
Bye-bye, Lake Lame.
So now I can still swing in for 1 and then recast the Pyrehound.
So, now I have enough cards in the graveyard to turn on Threshold for Grisly Fate.
Oh no, was that it? That's what did it?
That's what did it. I have enough cards to turn on Threshold for Grisly Fate, which I just drew all right here. So this is a card that makes 4 2/2 bears if you have Threshold, or 2 bears if you don't have Threshold, and it also has Flashback. Now here, listener, I get a little greedy, all right? I know I get a little greedy. So my hand is Splendid Agony, Grisly Fate, Nivix Guildmage, Narnum Renegade, Sacred Cat, and I believe that's it. So I think the correct play is... Oh, that's right, Shard Phoenix is in there as well. Shard Phoenix never did anything this game other than... inform Anthony that he was in my hand. It was extremely ominous by naming it with Metallic Mimic. So, here's what I should have done. Let's start there. What I should have done here is just played the Grisly Fate.
It's a good card.
It's going to put 8 power on board for me, which is going to make it difficult for you to attack with the Pyrehound or the Man of War ever. I'm dead to a combat trick if I do that, because you still have the Siren Stormtamer in play, and you'll just attack in the air and pump it or something, and I'll be done for. The other option I have, a much spicier line. I say spicy instead of bad because it makes it sound like it was a cool, flavorful play for me to make, is to run out the Nivix Guildmage. So the Nivix Guildmage has an activated ability where I can pay 2 and a red and a blue, so 4 mana total, to copy an instant or sorcery spell. So if I do that, I do have enough mana with my untapped swamp to play out the Guildmage, and here you can see me doing the math with my hand, play out the Guildmage, play the Splendid Agony, targeting Stormtamer and something else, and copy the Splendid Agony to cast another copy of it. So I have 2 of them that are coming down. So if I do that, then I will basically be putting a 2/2 in play, which I could jump block with, getting rid of the Stormtamer, and probably putting another counter on the Man of War or the Pyrehound. Most likely the Pyrehound, given that it's a little bit of a bigger threat. So here's the breakdown of those 2 lines. If I just play the bears, the ground is pretty well stuck up. It can be hard to attack through my ground creatures, and I'll just be dead to something in the air, like a combat trick on the Stormtamer, maybe an equipment, something to sort of pump up that Stormtamer. I'll probably be dead to. If I play the Guildmage double Splendid Agony turn, then I'm still dead to a combat trick because you'll have 2 creatures in play. So even if I chump block or block one of the creatures that are left, a combat trick with the unblocked one will still kill me, so I'm still dead to that. But now I'm also dead to any removal spell. You can just remove the Guildmage, and I no longer have a jump blocker, and the Man of War and the Pyrehound are going to do me in. And here's what I'm thinking. Here's the light I saw through the tunnel.
Tell me about the light.
The light was, next turn, I so badly wanted to cast a copied Grisly Fate and make 8 bears, which I felt like actually was kind of necessary for me to turn this game around.
Sure.
So I took the greedier line. I think it is probably incorrect, especially sitting here watching the video. I feel like it's got to be wrong to not just play the bears and hope that you don't have a combat trick, and then next turn, do my Splendid Agony, or even double Splendid Agony next turn. I could still play the Guildmage and take this exact same line. But instead, this is the line I took. So I played the Guildmage, played the first copy of Splendid Agony targeting the Storm Tamer and the Pyrehound, and played the second copy targeting 2 on the Pyrehound. Doesn't really matter what the second one targets. That's almost certainly the one you're gonna counterspell, because you're gonna let the one that would just kill the Storm Tamer resolve, because it only represents 1 additional power taken off the board. This is the line I took.
Yeah. Which I think makes sense. In retrospect, like, the next turn really would have turned this around.
Next turn would have been extremely gross.
Yeah.
Would have, being the key word.
That's also the first time I've ever seen that ability of Nivix Guildmage ever used in the Battlebox, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of mana.
It's a lot of mana.
Generally want to be spending my mana on that. I would hope I'd have better things to do than to spend 4 mana to copy something. I mean, it makes sense, right? The average CMC of a non-creature spell, an instant or sorcery in the Battlebox, is probably less than 4, I would guess. So, on average, the thing you're copying is not going to be worth the 4 mana you paid to copy it. Yeah. But yeah.
So you're all tapped out right now. I drew
Den Protector?
Den Protector. You are currently dead to Exactsies, 2 removal spells, so I'm just counting up my mana very carefully, making sure I can in fact get back a removal spell and cast it. So I'll play it as a morph. Oh, that menacing Grisly Fate.
There it is.
There it is. Oops, scared myself for a second.
So many bears.
Double check my mana. Triple check.
It's very important to do the math, especially when you think you got lethal. But yeah, so here you are going to play out that morph, which is a Den Protector. Mega morph it up, which forgot to put a +1/+1 counter on it. Once again, you lose the match. I call to judge. You get back the Seal of Doom. You play the Seal of Doom. Bye-bye chump blocker.
Doom your blocker.
And that is exact lethal, even with the -1/-1 counter on the Pyrehound. Which means that even with my other mistakes we've talked about, if I had maybe just played out that untapped swamp and put a Sacred Cat into play, the extra life could have been enough. Who's to say? But yeah, that's it. I scoop it up. I died.
I appreciate your desire to copy a Grisly Fate, but I think actually specifically because you were almost certainly obligated to block with the Nivix Guildmage, meant that there was a good chance it wasn't even going to be in play next turn. So I think specifically for that reason, maybe it would have been better just to go ahead and cast the Grisly Fate.
Yeah. Well, if the Pyrehound had kept the -1/-1 counter, I would have had a
But like the idea of having any
there.
instant or sorcery in my hand versus
for sure. It was extremely greedy. It was not a good line. But yeah, that was this game of Battlebox. Mistakes were made. Hopefully we will learn from them and do better next time. Any closing thoughts, Anthony?
Yeah, how do you feel about Grisly Fate? It was
I think Grisly Fate is one of the best cards in the Battlebox, is what I will say about it. It makes a lot of bears. Have you read the card?
Yeah, it says eight bears.
How many other cards are 8 for 1s?
8 for 1. Well, it is. It's just
it's pretty clean 8 for 1.
It's pretty clean 8 for 1. I really enjoyed Tragic Lesson in this game. That's a new addition.
The card seems very good too, and the art is very disgusting.
It's a little bit disturbing.
Very menacing. Anyway, that's been another game of Battlebox. Tune in again for us learning, playing, loving, shuffling,
and threatening each other with cats.
Other magic things. Anyway, follow us on Instagram, LuckyPaperMTG. Follow us on Twitter, LuckyPaperMTG. We stream on Twitch every once in a while. Battlebox, Twitch, Cube games sometimes on the Twitch. That's also LuckyPaperMTG. And happy magic, people.